So what I want to talk to you guys about today is what I know, at least in my 47, 48 years of doing this, the best big bass bait ever for me overall, especially this time of year. 50 to 60 degree water or so, maybe 65. And that's my live rubber jig with an Uncle Josh pork frog. And it's a sweetheart, let me tell you. I'm going to fish a little bit here. I'm going to talk about it. The best big bass bait I've ever thrown in my life, especially in the spring. Old school as it gets right here. I'll be right back. We're going to talk about the jig and frog. Now, I could very much be accused of fishing history here, but this thing still works. I just maybe not be good enough fisherman anymore to do it the way I used to. 52 degree water, dirty water, sun shining. Of course, I'm not really much sun here, but perfect situation. I can see maybe 13 inches deep, 14 inches deep. Water's starting to warm up. And I would love to kill them today on this jigging frog. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to fish very long. It's almost like 11:30 already. I just got here. Excuses, I know. But the jig and pork frog. Now, the pork frog, I guess it's back to a degree. I haven't looked. I have 60 or 80 bottles of pork. Some I had my own. People give me some. I got plenty of pork. Which I can't tell you how great this thing is. Well, I'm going to try. So I guess a little history lesson won't hurt anything. This jig and pork frog, Uncle Josh frog. I've got on a 3/8 ounce jig that I make, live rubber, old school jig, the way I've been doing it forever. The reason the pork frog, I think, several reasons why it lost favor. First off, they turned to crap. They got junky. Our modern corporate way of raising hogs, feeding them out fast, growing them quick, killed the pork, the rind itself. It made it to where the meat wasn't as good, the skin's not as thick, and I've got some newer ones, they're thin, they're ugly, they fall apart easy. Pretty simple, they didn't last as long as a good piece of plastic hardly. Also, they're not pretty. Not compared to plastic baits with all a myriad of colors, designs, and face it, folks like pretty. Bass fishermen like pretty just as much as anybody else. So, that being said, you got a bait that's not as good as it used to be, not as viable as it used to be, and then Uncle Josh quit making them too for a while. I guess they're making them again. For several years they didn't make them. Got all these choices of different trailers, beavers, and all that stuff. And it just kind of, I think it killed the pork frog mostly because people like pretty. Uncle Josh came out with different colors over the years, 2 color combinations. They just weren't as pretty as a piece of plastic. Solid orange one. This is number 1. This is a big chunk. It's jumbo. Maybe a little bit early for that, but I felt like throwing something that had some meat to it today. Because I'm not really worried about catching fish. I just got a couple hours to kill, and I thought, you know what, go ahead and go for the big and swing for the fences. The other thing that plastic does, that pork does, and plastic has a lot more built-in action. Now, I don't think that's very important until it is. How's that for just putting it all on the table? They're pretty because the colors are pretty because of all that action. I think the pork works well because of its density, the bulk, it holds scent well, it has a texture to it that plastic can never have. Big fish just, over the years, now I'm talking, I've experimented trying different things. And the big fish, over 5 pounds, 4 pounds, whatever, will consistently be on the jig and frog. Until the real warm water. Uh-oh. What, Uncle Josh pork frogs don't work in warm water? Well, wait a minute. Okay, jigs definitely work in warm water with a pork frog on them. A couple years ago I did a video, 80 degree water, I was spanking them on the jig and frog. However, deeper fish, deeper than 10 or 12 foot, summertime fish seem to like a little action. They like. I do a lot of double tail, curl tails. They like movement, especially in deeper water. The frog is not going to have that kind of action. They tried several things. I've got some, like a tadpole frog. It's got a twister tail, but it's not quite the same. So I'll give in to the fact that there are times when the fish want the action that the plastic provides, the pork doesn't, but just very little. And at nighttime in the summer, I'm still going to throw the pork frog. I want that bulk. I want that meat. I want that profile. Okay? So that, mostly that's why the pork frogs fell out of favor. It's mostly why people just got away from it, because it's old-fashioned. It's not cool enough. But y'all, I can't describe to you how many big fish I've caught on this over the years. It'd be awful cool to spank one right now. It's just something special that it does. And I don't know it all. I just know, I think it's the way the bait feels to them. I think it displaces a lot of water. Even the number 11 standard size, I even throw the little 101. It just moves water different than a piece of plastic does. And in water up to 60 or 65 degrees, it's my go-to. Pork rind is it. That's all there is. Now, I will always have a plastic bait on too if I'm serious fishing, to experiment with colors and things. But my number one choice for big bass, over 5 pounds, over 6 pounds, is a jig and frog. And quality fish all day long. I'll catch more on a jig and frog in the cooler water, and I'd love to prove that to you today. I may not be good enough to prove that to you today. When I'm fishing a jig and frog in the spring, today, March like 25th or 26th, 52 degree water, dirty water, this is not a play around game. It's an 8-foot flipping stick with 50-pound braid. I'm going to be laying it in some brush and some laydowns and some behind boat docks and stuff when I'm doing this. It's nothing to play around with. This isn't a finesse deal in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that makes it any finesse is the way you fish. If it means fishing a little bit slower. Like today, the water's still cool enough. I'm not doing a lot with it. Okay? As the water warms up over 55, I'll give some real aggressive hops. I'll give it big hops. I give it a big hop and shake at the top. When that is working, it is unbelievable. Not so much today. It's still cool enough water. I'm kind of leaving it close to the bottom. Just little snaps, little twitches. I'll shake it in the spot if I feel something good there. If I get in the wood, I'm going to leave it in the wood for a while. I got a lay down coming up right here. We're going to try that on. And I'm going to fish it on rock. Well, in highland reservoirs like I'm here today at Lake of the Ozarks, that's what we got. We got rock. I mean, boat docks and things also, but I'm going to be fishing on rocks. This semi-bluff bank here. I'm going to fish on chunk. I'm going to fish on pea gravel. I'm going to fish it on rock. Now, another thing will work down south. I think actually at Bassmaster on the open on the St. Johns River was one on jig of some sort. But if I was in Florida, I've never fished Florida, I'd be fishing riprap with it for the pre-spawn fish. I'm sure I would. I'm going to fish on fairly steep, 45 degree or so banks this time of year, progress into the shallower pockets the same way you do with any other bait for pre-spawn fish, basically all the way up to the spawn, where I'll be in those pea gravel pockets. I want the dirty water though, y'all. I've caught plenty of bass in clear water with a jig, but not like when it's dirty like this, when it got a good stain. I'm serious. I don't know, like 13 inches maybe, 15 inches maybe. It's not, got a real good color to it. Perfect for a jig today. Ideal situation for a jig. I just may not be where the fish are at. About the biggest experiment I'll do with a jig when I'm trying to establish a bite this time of year, especially with the jig and frog, is not so much colors as size of the jig, size of the trailer. Now, I'm throwing a 3/8 ounce with that big number 1 frog. It's 30% bigger than the standard size frog, because I want to move some water. I'm wanting one big bite. That's all I really want. But I will experiment with jig weights. Now, I'm fishing water here that's, I have a depth finder turned on. Who does a depth finder in March, right? I'm in about 6-7 foot of water right now. I'm not real deep. I'm not on no main lake thing. I'm back in the creek. Now, I'll tell you something. When the fish are biting this thing and I can get away with it, I like a 1/4 ounce with that number 1 frog, that bigger frog. I like that real slow, subtle fall. Yes, it's harder to fish, harder to feel, but I think it really shows off that pork frog with that light jig. It's a 3/8 ounce happy compromise. And there's plenty of room for half ounce and bigger jigs. I've never been one for the 3/4 1 ounce jigs. That's all me because I don't have a mold. I don't buy jigs. I make all my own stuff. I really ought to have some of those, because there's a time even this skinny water, that heavy jig can make all the difference in the world, and I know that. And the wind's probably killing my audio. Look at that big old tree. Man, you big-headed sucker be on that tree and just eat my lunch. Wouldn't that be just too cool? Oh, big old sow-belly hog-jaw monster. Come on. Woo. Son, hurt me. Hurt me. Now, if for some reason you decide to go ahead and try this, I don't know if I can convince you or not, you always want to put a piece of plastic, a plastic worm or something underneath that pork frog. That keeps it from getting wrapped around and getting on a hook as easy, because you cannot get a hook point through that pork frog, and trust me, I learned the hard way several times over the years. A little piece of plastic on there will help out a bunch. I know this would be a lot more convincing video if I could spank a couple donkeys on camera. Fish don't cooperate though. I just don't have the time. I'm probably fishing too fast. Actually, I can fish all day. I just want to get my boat into the shop today for some work and get some other things done. It's such a beautiful day. I hate to say I have chores, but I always have chores, don't we? All always have chores. Just gorgeous. Sun just beating down. We're just a day or two from things busting loose. And I'd like to be here when it happens, but I got so many things going on. So to recap, I still think the jig and pork frog, the old school pork frog, is the best way to catch a big bass this time of the year. Some days are better for spinner baits. Matter of fact, before I leave, I'm going to go throw a jerk bait out here in a little bit clear water in the wind, just for fun. Just for a few minutes. This is my favorite way to fish, though. Very few things detract me from wanting to use it. They dry out. You got to be careful. They will dry out. When I'm fishing pork seriously, I've got a spittoon with about 1.5 pounds of lead in the bottom of it. I keep in it a little bit of water and a little bit of smell good stuff, some sort of fish formula. I think that's critical sometimes too. Sometimes. It sure don't hurt. And that's about the only thing I can think of that's bad about pork frogs. They can dry out. Whoop-de-doo. I've never had plastic dry out like that, I don't think. So I'm going to fish another 15 minutes or so down this bank here. A lot of good looking stuff, a lot of cover. If I catch anything, you'll see it. If not, that's what it is. Jig and frog. Throw some questions at me. Tell me what your jig and frog experiences are. Good stuff. Old school, y'all. God bless. Thanks for watching.